With the new NFL kickoff rules, teams will be forced to make difficult decisions. For example, will they stick with the kick it to the end zone strategy and just take the touchback to the now 30-yard line, or will they play the NFL's games with them? How will teams handle the fact that 25% of kickoffs are going to result in the kicker being involved in the tackling process? Kyle Madsen picked 49ers punter Mitch Wishnowsky to be the 49ers kicker for the new kickoffs, and his reasoning is actually pretty genius. But there are so many layers to this. There's the Kansas City Chiefs approach, there's the Baltimore Ravens approach, and then, of course, what are the 49ers going to do? In today's video, I'm going to break down the trade-offs, tell you why I think Kyle Madsen is not only right and on track, but how this could present as a massive special teams advantage for the 49ers over other teams this season. If you're new here, I'm Nate, and we are talking the San Francisco 49ers every single day on this channel. It really helps me out if you would hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out on all the conversation. The good news is this: I think the 49ers may have a beautiful mismatch against other NFL teams in a dude named Mitch Wishnowsky, who could be the kicker this season because of the mere fact that the guy can tackle. We're going to get more into that in a little bit. We're going to get there, but 2023 was the lowest kick return year in the National Football League, and the last decade has been sliding scale of less and less kick returns, and more towards kicking the ball just out and making it not even an option. And it has made kickoffs less fun to watch as a viewer. But I don't know if that's exactly why the NFL wants to change this. I think part of it is because of that. I think we also have this problem. The NFL knows the publicity that follows around players getting injured, especially with things like CTE in the long term, is bad for business. And so they're trying to figure out, and have been for a long time, trying to figure out how to make it safer, but still fun to watch, right? And they're looking down the barrel of the reality that the safer it gets, the less fun it is. And unfortunately, even the stats would say it isn't actually that much safer nowadays than in the past. So they made this rule change. That's what they've done. We don't know, by the way, if the rule change is going to be a forever thing, if the rule change is just for now and it doesn't go well. They've tried other things in the past. This could just be a trial period for this season and then it goes away. So that presents a really unique opportunity for some teams and a huge disadvantage for other teams. And I'm going to break that down for you. Teams have to manage the reality though, and so it's something to think about. What are these teams going to do, and how are they going to organize around trying to avoid big injuries, but also trying to make the most of the situation in front of you? And in my mind, nobody had a great deal of time to plan for these new kickoff rules from a personnel perspective. Yes, of course, you could go out there and you can make sure you have special teams individuals who have the ability to tackle, and you can make sure that you have dudes who have kicked a ball before. But that's not really going to be easy in this exact situation. 10 years from now, if this rule continues to go on, teams will be able to prepare for that. They'll be able to find mismatches in their draft, and they'll be able to watch college football players and look for those guys that specifically have excellent tackling ability as a kicker. And that tackling ability just got far more important. We'll talk about that later with Justin Tucker. But some of the questions that come out of this: do you look at your defense and find out who has any soccer history in their background? Do you look at your kickers and find out how many of them have any tackling experience? Do you want to risk your best kicker and put them out there as a tackler every single time your team scores a point? On top of that, will this new rule even stick around? All of these questions leave a lot of advantage to any teams who have a player who can kick the ball and can also tackle. I think you get where I'm going with this. There's a massive advantage this team to teams like the 49ers who have individuals who can kick a ball and can tackle, and that's Mitch Wishnowsky. Now, if you go for that kick it to the end zone strategy, I'll put the rules up on here just to remind you. And I don't actually think this rule I'm about to tell you is on here, but if you go with the kick it out of the end zone sort of strategy, then the reality is the other team's picking up the ball now at the 30-yard line. Used to be 20, then it was 25, now it's 30. And that's crazy when you think about it, because if it's in a tight game scenario and the other team only needs a field goal, or say it's a 2-possession game and the other team needs a field goal and a touchdown, and getting in a field goal range really quickly could be a huge advantage, then you don't want to be in the situation where you're not sure if your guy can drop the ball right where he needs to. You also don't want to be in the situation where you put the wrong guy back there because they're a great tackler, but they are super inconsistent and they kick the ball and it lands on the 20-yard line. I'm going to show you some visuals to back up what I'm saying here in just a second. But you've probably heard of how other teams are handling this. And if you have a stout defense and your team is in the lead, then sure, you say, to heck with the rule, we're just going to kick the ball and we're going to let it go all the way out. And we're going to put Moody out there or whoever, and we're just going to let it happen. And we're not going to worry about it because our defense is good enough and or we're up considerably in this game and we don't need to worry about them getting the ball at the 30. Let's not take any risks. I understand that play. I think the reality is it will just be a lot less. It's not going to happen as often as we're used to seeing it right now this season. Now, I pulled up some visuals just from, obviously, here's the big reason that there's this mismatch, right? So all of these dudes in the middle, sorry, my cursor's on the wrong spot. All these dudes in the middle are stuck there. They've all got to be at that exact location, right? And they're stuck within this landing zone, or excuse me, landing zone is back here, but they're stuck within this zone. I forget what it's called. And setup zone. And inside this setup zone, you have to wait until the ball touches a player or the ground, which can actually result, if the kick is really good, in a massive gap, which is interesting. It will beg the question, who do you want as the receivers? Do you want a guy who has just straight line speed? Or do you want a running back who has run through gaps a million times in their lives and they know how to run through what could potentially be one solid gap and then make a kick or miss, right? So this is going to be very, very interesting to watch. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Here's a picture of the literal distance between a dude catching the ball inside the 10-yard line and how far his team is way over here at the 30-yard line. So there is a huge, huge gap between there. And you could, just to get a visual, I took another screenshot just showing kind of by the time they got to the 20-yard line, which you would have to think most teams are expecting at the very least to get to the 20-yard line. That's going to be an easy kind of target there where you're like, I have to get to the 20-yard line. This is guaranteed must happen. So if they get to the 20-yard line, right, here's a guy who virtually on the play, and I can't show you the play because of copyright, apologies, but this dude has made his he has totally found a mismatch against the returning team, and he got through basically just by touching, right? I mean, it was quick. So this is kind of your best case scenario. If you're catching the ball inside the 10, your best case scenario is your kicking team is getting there about the 20, right? And from there, he ends up actually getting past the first guy, because you also have to have such a short period of time where it has to line up, where the guy that gets through also has to be in the right position on the field. So it'll be so much fun to see how teams are going to play this and how drastic things will go in order to play this, right? So that being said, Kansas City Chiefs, you probably heard by now, this was now I think 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens are doing too, but the Kansas City Chiefs are planning on putting, or at least testing out the idea of putting safety Justin Reed out there for kickoffs. If he can kick the ball, he's a great tackler, and it is a genius move if you have a safety that can kick the ball, because a safety is used to being that guy at the back, right? He's used to be in that position where he might be the final guy between the running player, the receiving player, and the touchdown behind him. So it makes a lot of sense to me why the Kansas City Chiefs are thinking about using a safety in this position. Of course, assuming he can kick the ball consistently and to a decent range. If you're kicking the ball to the 18-yard line, then you're giving that team, you're giving them a massive advantage. They should probably make it to like the 27 or 28 before even having to make one guy miss. That's crazy field position, and you've made a big mistake. You should have just kicked it out at that point, right? That's how I see it in my mind, all right? I haven't watched a ton of XFL, but that's from what I've seen, that's what it looks like to me. Now, Baltimore, they're thinking with Justin Tucker that they're hoping, and Ravens fans will tell you Justin Tucker's the best kicker in the NFL history and all that good stuff. And that's fine, whatever. I don't really need to get into that argument today. It doesn't matter to me. But Justin Tucker is beefing up and lifting. We learned last week he's trying to get beefed up before the season because he wants to be the guy. He wants to be the guy that Harbaugh says will give you the go, right? So if this is a really interesting play, because if Tucker can't prove that he's a fantastic tackler, then you've made a huge risk putting him out there, not just because of the tackling issue, but also because of the fact that if he gets injured on that play, which does happen in kickoffs, if he gets injured, then you're in a really dangerous situation. You're going to see also with these lines, which I think is so weird, but it's smart by the NFL to, I guess, XFL to play it this way, right? Because of these lines, you don't get a lot of depth. So you're not hitting layers and layers of people. Sometimes it looks almost like rugby where the guys are once they are actually meeting, there's not a lot of depth, and if you get past that front line, you could be going for it. So it will be super, super interesting to watch. Now, obviously, the question that we care about, right, is what are we going to do? What are the 49ers going to do? And Kyle Madsen says, put Mitch Wishnowsky in. I love this take, by the way. I can only show you a really short clip because of copyright reasons, but remember this from preseason a few years ago. Well, boom! I mean, come on. And he kicked that ball, right? So he ran the full length of the field and then absolutely laid him out. That is the kind of play you want to see coming from a guy who's about to potentially, according to Kyle Madsen, could be the guy kicking the ball this season. That would be fantastic. Of course, he's Australian born. He's got that background growing up playing sports like soccer and rugby, super athlete. And, when he's punting the ball, nobody really sees how athletic he is, although he's a fantastic punter of the ball in my humble opinion. If the guy can tackle like that on a regular basis, my goodness, it makes a whole lot of sense to not have a mismatch in that position where if they break through that line, you're kind of out of it. It'll also be interesting to see once the ball does hit, how many guys step back and try to provide depth and a layer of support behind there. That'll be so fun to watch. And it'll be interesting to see too, like how clearly defined all of this is. Is every team going to act basically the same, or is it going to look super different from one team to the next? Will it be lots of extra little strategies? I'm really looking forward to checking it out. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch this season. And I think that the 49ers with Wishnowsky have a little bit of an advantage there if he ends up being their kicker because of his tackling ability and the fact that, again, he can kick the ball consistently. So I'd like to see that happen. We'll see what happens, though. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, what a time to be alive.